What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from Zoom again, and this time we are here with Zak of Archon Angel. It is great to be able to talk with you. Thanks for being here, man.
Thank you, Alex. I appreciate it.
Anytime, man, anytime. This new album, too, is absolutely kick ass. I can't wait for the rest of the world to hear it. For the people who haven't heard the full length album yet, though, do you feel that the first two singles that you released, Fortress and Afterburn, is a good representation of what this whole record will sound like, or is that just scratching the surface of what's to come?
It's pretty much, I think it's pretty much just scratching the surface. I mean, it's got some, cool elements. I like the things shown in the first two videos, but really it is, I mean, the way these albums turn out, it's got all kind of stuff. It's got deep prog tracks that are on there that people still have to discover. It's got a little bit of everything. So I think it's kind of more like scratching the surface, to tell you the truth. Good point.
Yeah, I mean, because I do consider this album, like obviously the metal puritans are going to want to label it power metal or prog metal or all that, but I mean, when you listen to a track like Quicksand or when you listen to a track like I Will Return or Shattered or Lake of Fire, it really seems like every song does play by its own rules. So it almost seems like you're able to kind of like experiment and sort of like push, think outside the box quite often in the songwriting, right?
Yeah, we try. I mean, the first album, Fallen, it it got us going, and it had a lot of prog elements to it, because our producer Aldo Lenobile, who works with several bands on Frontiers, but he's our producer and guitarist, so he comes from major prog influences and even bands like Secret Sphere, a band that he was in, one of his bands that's super progressive. So I knew that element was coming in. He's also a big Savatage fan. He told me that from the beginning. I think he's like probably, oh my God, he's probably at least 15 years younger than I am. But he said that he's a big fan of Savatage. So I said, all right, that's cool. And he was like, just being able to do records together, he was real happy about that. And I said, that sounds like a good fit. So he does have all kind of influences coming in. And he's just one of like six, I think I counted 5, 6 songwriters that we have for Archon Angel, which is good, which gives us, to your point, it gives us more angles because it seems like the ideas are abundant and they're coming from multiple sources rather than just having a few writers. I've been involved with stuff like Savatage that had like 2 or 3 major writers. And then with this, we got double that. And then with my other band, Circle to Circle, we had basically 2, maybe sometimes 3 writers. We had guest writers. We had John Oliva from Savatage. We had Chris Caffrey, which is interesting because for the first time since then, we got Chris Caffrey, who contributed Quicksand. I
Oh,
don't know if you
really?
know that or not.
I didn't know. I love
So,
Chris Caffrey. I mean, pisses me off that at my summer job, I was repairing shit I was repairing instruments. It pisses me off was the fucking theme song in those repair rooms. So, shout out to Chris Caffrey. I love his Trans
yes.
Siberian Orchestra and his solo work is kick ass.
Yeah, I mean, it was great to have him on board again. I mean, it's kind of gotten to be a small family over there, with Aldo, and Frontiers, because he was producing Spirits of Fire, right before we got into mixing this second Archon Angel album. And so it was easy to have Chris contribute a song. So I think the timing was right there, and it was just that the happenstance at the time was fitting for him to, he just kind of spoke up and says, "Hey, I want a song on that one." And Aldo's like, "Okay, what do you got?" So he gave us what became Quicksand. It had no name. It was just, riffs and stuff like that. So we kind of finished it all up together. And, that gave us maybe, I think I'm counting either 5 or 6. Let's see. Myself, Aldo, my wife, Catherine, who writes the lyrics to all the Archon Angel records. She did the first one and this one, so she'll be in charge of lyrics and stuff, and helps out with some vocal things. And I'm in charge of the vocal melodies and all the anything that is vocals going and recorded. And then we have Antonio Agate, who is a synth, who arranges all the strings and synth stuff for us, and he's a contributing writer. We also have Alessandro Del Vecchio, who contributes some as well, even more so on the first album, but still contributing on the second one, the album 2.
Yeah.
fitting since it's our second album. So
Yeah.
I think that's about it.
Yeah.
So and then Chris Caffrey. So one, two, three, yeah, five. So that's good. I like that.
Got
I
quite.
like this is the first time I've been involved with something that's got so many writers. So it's really cool. I mean, there's no shortage of people, of getting inspired by something.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to going forward. We have a multi-album deal. So we're looking forward to getting on, to do albums 3 and 4 at least. And I see that the good ideas are going to continue to roll.
Yeah, I've always said that Aldo is almost like the Dr. Dre of Frontiers, because of what he's able to do. So, um, but like, it's funny that you mentioned that
That's
too,
right.
because you have all these different songwriters in there, and I kind of wanted to mention that because like art with Archon Angel, with with Two Out and your previous album Fallen, was like the intention to maybe like combined efforts from of Secret Sphere and Savatage and Circle to Circle, and like kind of combine all your efforts into one, or were you all kind of like trying to step into uncharted territory with this?
Well, it was mostly uncharted territory because even though those influences are there, we all knew we got to come up with something, that's going to be, indicative of this band. If it's going to be, molded into a real band, not just a one-off album. There's a lot of that out there where people come together for one album, and that's cool. I mean, Frontiers does that, which is good. It's fitting in some situations, but we kind of had a longer vision, for Archon Angel. So I think with Aldo, he really is striving to put in, he's going to have his influences and they're going to pop out in the music. I can tell he likes Queensryche. There's no doubt about it. I mean, you can look at the first video. We have Fortress. I'm hearing somewhat of a, honestly, I'm hearing somewhat of a you know, a Queensryche riff in there.
Operation Mindcrime
Just
is
my
definitely
opinion.
an
Other people might
influence.
not agree. I tend to look at music, and the first thing, like I have got so many thousands of songs in my head, like I'm a little older, like I'm 57. So, I started listening to my mom's rock albums probably when I was 3, just and because she was into rock and roll, and that's probably what eventually got me into it somehow subliminally or whatever. But I I've got, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and all this modern stuff all packed into my brain. So I'm one of those people who really bugs people because I'll listen to a song and go, oh man, that's Three Dog Night. That's a Three Dog Night riff. They'll go, what are you talking about? They don't even know these bands. But I tend to like hear a riff and go, I kind of think I know where that came from. And it might ruin it for a lot of people. But, to me, it's more like just interesting to see what people's influences are. They're not copying stuff. I mean, it's not a copy. It's just an influence. It's an inspiration, and it's totally fine. So I know he loves them and me too. I'm a huge, Queensryche fan. So, going way back, I mean, we have basically a lot of the same influences. People tell me, hey, I'm hearing, Maiden on here. I'm hearing like Bruce Dickinson type lyric. I didn't think that it was, that way when I'm, doing the vocals, but maybe it is. So people hear a lot of different things depending on who you are. Um, you know, I, but I'm a person that tends to like pick out riffs and say, hey, that reminds me of
Yeah.
blank.
Well, what is
That's just the way my brain works. But
yeah.
so
What is prog though? Because like when I ask people what prog is, like Yes sounds very different from Opeth, which sounds very different from Fate's Warning, and Queensryche, which sounds very different from Neil Blivoscaris. So like, what makes something prog?
right.
I've always heard that it's maybe a band that doesn't follow the traditional verse chorus structure, but then again, there's also like an ambience to all prog bands that I think are also prevalent. So what would make something prog really?
That's a great question. I think that that's part of it. I think that if you don't follow the traditional, or whatever you might have, songwriting structures, that's definitely a part of it. Uh, I think progressive means getting out, getting ahead, and being, getting into some new territory. That's what progressive means to me. So you got to forge this new territory. Technically, from a drummer standpoint, that's my first instrument, drums. Prog means using a lot of wild time signatures that are not like having a song that's like 4/4 time all the way through, or like a pounding, steady time signature. You're changing. To me, if I hear a song that goes into different time signatures, starts out one way, kind of, sets the groove, and then all of a sudden go to odd time, might go to 5/4 time or 7/4 or something like that, 4/4, maybe have a 3/4 measure stuck in there to throw you off. That to me is the definition of prog more than anything. But again, I'm going to be stuck a little bit more to rhythmic definitions. You hear that? Uh, but yeah, time signatures to me, if I'm hearing all kind of wild stuff going on, like Dream Theater, yeah, I mean, that's gonna, he'll pop something in there that just throws you. That's prog to me. But it's everything. It's what you mentioned, and I think it's trying to do things not like the norms that have been already set.
Yeah, and
Plus having time signature changes, and plus everything you said.
yeah, and having songs that are 27.5 minutes long as well. So like, I,
Yes.
but and it's funny too because I always said that like Prog's specialty was concept albums in a way and like a storytelling, and with a title like Archon Angel, and how it has that sort of religious, second century sort of reference behind it. I thought maybe melodically with the voice that you incorporate on here, which is incredible, that maybe you're also expressing maybe like it because I could tell by your vocal melodies that there's a lot of emotion that you channel into it, but from the lyrical concept albums, it almost seems like you're channeling or like addressing sort of like external sources of inspiration, right?
Yes. With the concept, we're taking, like you said, it's a second century religion. Gnosticism is where the Archon comes from. The Archon is an entity, and most of the time they is depicted as having wings, a very strong, powerful person that has special powers. The ability to kind of fly up to the heavens and back down to earth, and he's the only way that the people of Earth can get their message to the divinities within that religion. You've got something called the demiurge, which is the guy who created everything in that religion. Like he's the creator, but he's a lesser divinity. He doesn't have the overall power like they have in the modern religions, such as God, one overall powerful God that controls everything. This is a little different. This has it's a religion of lesser divinities, whereas the demiurge creates everything, but he's not really involved too much after that. Then you got this thing called the gnosis, of course, with a G, and the G is silent. Love that kind of stuff. Not the gnosis, but this is the guy who is kind of right below the boss, who is in charge of all esoteric knowledge. So he gives us all the knowledge that we have, which is interesting. And then Christ's role in that religion is more in that it's he by through him is the only way that you're going to have redemption of the human spirit. So people are looking for that redemption of the human spirit, as kind of the end game. That's what he does, and that's about it. He's an emissary, if you will, to the other divinities. And the Archon is a way to take the message, is the only way to take the messages of the people of Earth. Say, we want to send a message to the divinities. How you do that? The only way is the Archon has to stop by, take some notes, then fly away and give that message to them. Kind of wild, but we incorporated the Archon because we're bringing him into modern day time, and he's on our records. He's helping us with all the modern day problems that we have on Earth, and maybe it's a way to help us with some of the stuff that we just can't seem to, to get on top of, whether it be pandemic problems or political problems or whatever you got.
Yeah. Well,
all the stuff we have. Maybe this guy can help out. But like you said, the inspirations are coming from everywhere, even people we meet. The stories of the Archon are represented in each song on our records. So you can take a song and that's a story in his life. It's almost like a chapter in the Archon's life. So
well,
that gives us enough impetus to keep coming up with new material, especially from my wife's standpoint, because she's, the lyricist and she came up with the band name anyway, Archon Angel, and came up with the entire thing. So we got this one central person who's, kind of like knows what she's looking for as far as the content. And of course the chemistry is great between us working together and stuff. So it's been good. I get inspired by the stuff that she gives me, and the whole writing team is trying to work on, getting bumps of energy out of everybody.
Well, you led me perfectly into the next question, actually, because conceptually, like, is the Archon Angel, like, and the lyricism, is it almost kind of like an external metaphor of your own personal life or your own personal experiences, or maybe the lyrics that are representative of your wife as she writes the lyrics in a way? Or are you, like, expressing almost kind of like an external entity outside of your personal self? Like, maybe portraying a character or something like
Well,
that?
there are little bits that are taken from our personal situations, but not a whole lot. It's mostly taken from the outside and stuff that the Archon will be going through in terms of the story. Um, Mostly in the first album, this is a guy who was not the Archon to start with. He's a regular mortal human being on Earth who happens to be a very successful executive, but he's got a substance abuse problem and he's kind of lost and wants to run his, you know, sports car into a wall. You know what I mean? Like, he's got all the money in the world, but he's not happy. He's got, and that leads him to drinking, drugs. He's getting, high and pretty much fucked up constantly. But yet you wouldn't think somebody who has everything would do that because it kind of like a story about money doesn't buy happiness. Well, here come the divinities and they say, you might not know about this, but you've been chosen to be an archon. And he's like, what? Why me? What are you doing? And what in the hell are you talking about? Well, you actually have the powers necessary that we need to create you, and we're going to give you everything you need. Don't worry about it. So, of course, his initial reaction is, nah, I'll pass. I know I got issues, but I think I can work them out, man. Like I'm in no real shape right now to be recruited by, divinities for this role. I'll pass. Go to the next guy. It doesn't work like that. It only comes to one person. You really don't have a choice. So he has to go through the whole cycle of resistance all the way to acceptance of this role. But then slowly he comes around, and as he starts to develop, to do the things to develop the powers that they say he already has in him, and they're coaching him, so to speak, he starts to go, all right, well, I guess if this is what I have to do, I might as well get good at it. He's flying all around the world, helping out different situations and kind of nudging things, kind of in the background. And he also reaches out to the calls of people on the people of Earth for specific things to take their message to the gods. So he's brought into modern time and he's doing all this stuff, but he didn't want to at the beginning. That's where the first album leaves off. Now you come into the second album where he's already kind of like accepted the role. He's more comfortable in it. He's doing good things. He's trying to, help the earth not to, destroy itself. So he's feeling pretty good. And then you can read the lyrics of each song and kind of like with that, preface that leads, to that gives you a good idea of what to take from the lyrical content of each song. As far as where do we get that from? Everywhere, especially people we meet. We might meet somebody like a soldier who served, like a Vietnam vet or, something like that, who's got superhuman stories of survival. And we've met these people, and my wife would be sitting there like going, I mean, not taking out a notebook, but making mental
Of
notes.
course.
Next thing you know, that story's coming out in one of these songs, and that's put into the Archon's life. So, yeah, we're getting inspiration from all over the place, especially people who have like stories that are a little bit more of something that that most people wouldn't even experience in life. Um, so there's a little bit probably about me in there, probably a little bit more in the first album.
Mm-hmm.
There's stuff about, but yeah, we've got stuff coming from people we meet. We got, hey, stories that we read. It could be the press. It could be a story that we read in the news about something that's just unbelievable. The same kind of inspirations that we always had, that I know that Paul O'Neill, our late producer of Savatage, he got those same inspirations from reading books, you know, reading articles in magazines, political stuff. Heck, he even put me a Reader's Digest in front of me one time and says, "You're not going to believe the story I got for a song out of this." And I'm like, Reader's Digest? Because there's great stuff in there. So you never know where the inspiration is going to come from. Everywhere.
Absolutely. And I have two more questions for you. I kind of wanted to circle back, go back in time a little bit because this year does mark two anniversaries throughout your career that I kind of wanted to ask about. One is 30 years of your debut with Savatage, Edge of Thorns, and it's also 20
Yep.
years of the debut of Circle to Circle, Watching in Silence. So just a little, basically, how different of a mind frame has like every project been really working with all that, and how would you say you've evolved as an artist since 1993 and 2003?
Mm, man, been a lot of development. Um, and it is amazing that we got those anniversaries. And I had not even really thought about the 20th anniversary of Circle to Circle, which really involves some of the cast, the same cast of characters. That was John, Chris, and me writing all the songs for that first Circle to Circle album. So that was just going to be a way for us to get our music out there in another way, just to have another outlet. It really was only meant to be one album. It wasn't meant to be 7 albums over 13 years, but they go wild, and that's the way the music business is. But yeah, I look back and I had to do some quick development even when I first joined, Savatage for Edge of Thorns because I was new and John wanted to step back and do a producer role, and they said, "Hey, we're looking for people." I was just one of like 100 demos that came in, and I guess what helped me, two things helped. One, I didn't really sound like John because it seemed like everybody that was putting an audition in there, they were kind of trying to sound like John, and that was kind of like what they weren't looking for. So it was like the obvious thing, sort of put a bunch of people out, you know, immediately. So it just happened that the demo that I gave them from Wicked Witch, which also contained the drummer Jeff Plate in that band as well, who later came into Savatage after Doc Wackles, after the drummer after he stepped aside. But that I was really pretty much one dimensional. I mean, I had like a kind of a smooth, higher, voice, and really pretty much only one tonal kind of quality, in my opinion. So when I got into rehearsals for Edge of Thorns, it quickly dawned on me that I'm going to have at least a two-dimensional, if not try to border on three-dimensional. I mean, three different sounds. I but I was able to do it because I'd been singing long enough. I mean, I've been singing since I was 9, and I was, when I started playing drums. So I guess the lucky thing was couldn't really find a singer that was better than me in the first like 5 bands I was in when I was a kid. So I was having to sing from behind the kit. So the fact of having to sing right away, it helped me. So by then I had the experience to be able to make a quick transition and develop you need two tones, at least two different kind of, tones, more like a heavier, more low end, what we call, a low timbre that I didn't do before that. That is indicative in the song Edge of Thorns, because the verses are kind of like real smooth, they're very smooth and kind of high up there. But then when the chorus kicks in, it's got to go to the next gear. So I didn't even have that next gear till till when I joined Savage. I was like, you got to have multiple gears with this band. But I was able to adjust quickly just because of my experience. So thank goodness. But since then, I probably have it's probably at least 4 dimensions. I mean, there's probably 4 different sounds or 4 tones
Hundreds.
that I've been able to develop. Especially with TSO and everything. Now that's theatrical, and that's a lot of what we call, you're singing, but it's kind of like talk singing because you're acting.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the latest thing I've been able to put in there. So that's kind of the 4th dimension, but it still uses everything that was in Savatage, which is beautiful because, TSO kind of emanates obviously from Savatage. So you're not going to be too far off base if you've been the singer of Savatage. It's going to be a natural fit for TSO. So, but you do have to, it wasn't so theatrical all the time in Savatage. So I had to develop that piece for TSO. So now I have, what I call clean, soft, clean power, low timbre power, and now low timbre clean.
With that
If that
range,
means
with that range alone, you could sing anything. I feel like, though, you know what I mean. Like you could sing R&B just as much as you could sing death metal at this point. So I think you kind of have the Mike Patton thing working for you.
Thank you. He's amazing, and I really appreciate that. Um, and I think you're right. I think with the different elements, if you work at it, you should be able to sing most stuff. I know being from South Carolina, I think country is kind of a given.
Hmm.
I can even put my accent, the original accent, in there, and we'll be all right. And have a bottle of whiskey on the side and a cooler of cold beer, and I don't know, the things they sing about all the time. Um, but and that would be okay. And there's not much use for like, grinding metal in that. So you can, you kind of leave that element out. Um, Stuff like uh Broadway is what we do in TSO. So it's rock theater. So that's just an element of clean power and a little bit rough sometimes if you'd like to throw that in there. And of course some clean, soft stuff. Um, but yeah, luckily, uh, I think it comes down to the set of vocal cords you're born with, which is the luck component, and you just got to thank lucky stars for that, which I do. To be able to have something that's adaptable. The good thing about the human voice is, the human singing voice is, they say it's at least 60 to 70% adaptable. So if you can't do something, there's a 70% chance that if you just work on it with a coach or something like that, that it will be completely adaptable to get that sound you're looking for. So that's something lucky about the human voice when it comes to development.
Yeah, of course, of course. That's really, really interesting on how it's like both a physical, it's a technical, like not to discredit drummers or guitarists or bassists or whatever, but like the voice is one of those instruments. Like you don't have to go out to a guitar center and buy. You can't go buy your voice. You can't,
Exactly.
you can't, there's not going to be an upgraded gear version for your voice unless you count auto tune, which no, you don't. But
Which does sound like auto tune. It's funny, you still cannot take what goes into the microphone and really do much with it.
yeah,
That's the thing about singing. So you have to be able to you got to really be able to mechanically execute in front of the mic. You're not going to just be able to go, glug, 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 glug. Okay, turn that into like Edge of Thorns. It doesn't really work that way. Even with auto tune, I think some kids, they might think that, hey, with all the technology, I can just go in there and do whatever. Not true, because it is exactly what goes in the mic, 100% even to this day. And you can hear auto tune. You could put a touch on there to keep things kind of there, but if you going wild with it, or bring it in there too much, you can always tell.
definitely.
So that part's not going to help too much. You have to do the work. But the good part is, if you put the study in, you can get anywhere you want. You're 70% developable to different tones. And so it's good. It's a thing that people don't really realize. It's highly developable.
Of course. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today and for such an awesome conversation. And most of all, thank you for another fantastic album from Archon Angel. Is there just anything else that you'd like to promote with the release of 2 that you're allowed to say at this moment, of course?
Yeah, everybody, go check out the first 2 videos. We got Fortress, the first single, and we got Afterburn, which is a lyric video featuring myself, which was interesting because, usually these lyric videos, they don't really have, I haven't ever sang like in one. So that was cool to be able to I just did the filming, sort of to be used in that with all the graphics and stuff going on. So it came out pretty good. That's a song that I think does have like Savatage, elements in it. Here or there. So when I'm reading the comments under the video,
Yeah.
I go there, like last night, I think was the first time and it was very inspiring, really. The comments are by far really positive. So I'm kind of like getting a little bit of feedback from the people leaving it on, the YouTube, comments under the video. There, and somebody said, hey, I'm picking up all kind of Savatage. And somebody said they're picking up Iron Maiden. And that's where I got that from. That I was mentioning to you earlier. I'm like, really? That's interesting. So it is wild what different people hear. Like, I would have never thought that people would pick that, but then I'm listening to it and say, hey, you might be right. I'll take it as a compliment. Bruce Dickinson, that's one of my favorite singers ever. So if somebody wants to mention that and put us in the same breath, then I'm all for it.
I definitely
But
see
yeah,
that
check out
in
the 2
voice.
videos. That's what we got. And I appreciate it. Share them. And they're doing really good. And I think you'll like both of them. Fortress is shot outside, And the interesting thing is, my part was shot here around Columbia, South Carolina, and they said, do your part first so we can match it. And I'm looking at it, and the guys who shot over there in Italy in the band, because my whole band's from Italy, you can't tell that it's not in the same place. It looks exactly like the same place, but it's in wildly two different countries.
Wow, that's awesome.
But the director, he did a really good job um, of making, bringing the continuity there together. But yeah, I just, how everybody look at that, that'll be awesome. And thank you so much for everything, Alex. I appreciate it.
Anytime, man. Anytime. Everybody, we are here with Archon Angel. Be sure to check out 2 coming out via Frontiers very soon. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.